Well, hello, how you doing? It's just gone 9 o'clock here in Portstewart in Northern Ireland, and I'm continuing with my lockdown book readings from my books. At the minute, we're on to my second book, Breadboy, Teenage Kicks and Titty Bread, What Paperboy Did Next. And each night I'm reading a chapter about all that happened to me in my teenage years. So this evening I'm going to read chapter 16. Just want to let you know about a few other things before I start. I am uploading all the book readings that I'm doing onto my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is Paperboy Belfast. And so if you look me up there, you'll be able to get all the Paperboy episodes. I've nearly them all uploaded now. And then once I finish that, I'm going to upload all the Breadboy chapters as well. Also on my YouTube channel, I've just released a free audiobook of my fourth book, which is called Little House on the Peace Line. And I've released it to raise money for a charity that I support that is helping to feed people in the slums of Uganda during lockdown. So really, if you're interested in that, you can go and listen to the audiobook for free. And if you enjoy it, you can make a wee donation to help my friends in Uganda. Anyway, that's enough of a commercial break before I start. I'm going to read chapter 16 of Breadboy, which is called Punk for Peace. And I'll stop in the middle and say hello to a few people as we go along. The last week of term before Christmas at BRA was magic, so it was. The exams were over and the familiar obsession with the twin priorities of GCEs and rugby results was replaced with three more exciting prospects. The highlights of this week would be the Christmas Carol service, the long-awaited auditions for West Side Story, and most exciting of all, the opportunity to shine before the whole school in the charity talent contest. To contribute to the generous atmosphere, some of my middle-class classmates brought in Christmas presents for every single teacher, even the Latin teacher with a bad skin. I interpreted this behaviour as either showing off or being a lick. At primary school, everyone gave their teacher a bottle of green shampoo for Christmas, except for Titch McCracken, who opened his teacher's gift on the way to school and tried to sell it to wee girls in the playground for 10p or a curly whirly. Inevitably, the shampoo leaked out over the Santa wrapping paper and on to your Peter and Jane reading book. But our primary school teachers welcomed this annual display of generosity, and they always had very clean hair in January. However, now that I was all grown up and at big school, I only gave Christmas presents to the teachers I actually liked. Several students at BRA opted out of the tradition of Christmas gifts altogether. David Pritchard, being dead clever and all, proclaimed that the Nativity was a big fairy story like Santa Claus and said he wouldn't be buying anyone a Christmas present in case they thought he was one of those pathetic little weak people who believes in God. David's credibility as the school's leading atheist was slightly undermined when he agreed to read the Bible passage about the shepherds and the angels at the Christmas Carol service. I was raging. Why did Shankle Breadboys never get picked to do the readings at the BRA Carol service? I believed every single word of the Bible, even the ones I didn't understand, and I'd spent all summer sharing the gospel with the children of Dublin. David Pritchard defended himself against all accusations of hypocrisy by saying that if he had been chosen out of the whole school to read Goldilocks and the Three Bears, he would have agreed to read that too, whether it was true or not. It wasn't fair. Miss Kelly opened the presents from her most generous or most fawning pupils during chemistry class, in between separating and purifying experiments. I was distracted from all this chromatography by my own separation from the purity of Judy Carton on the other side of the classroom. I assumed Miss Kelly didn't keep her presents to open on Christmas Day because she wasn't married, and that meant she would be all alone and sad on Christmas morning. The poor woman seemed fairly pleased when she opened my Christmas gift because it was an appealing jam jar of blue bath salts covered with a knitted ballerina lady. It was only when Miss Kelly removed the wooden dancer to peek at the scented salts that I noticed the similarity in appearance of the perfumed granules inside this jar with the contents of the poisonous chemicals on our top shelf. I prayed Miss Kelly wouldn't get the jars mixed up at Christmas in all the rush, as I didn't want to be responsible for a Christmas Day, a tragic Christmas Day bath for my chemistry teacher. Of course, Timothy Longsley gave all the teachers expensive presents just to show how rich he was and to try to impress Judy. When Miss Kelly removed all the silver bows and ribbons and gold wrapping paper from his gift, a box with the words fondue set was revealed. I didn't really know what a fondue set was because no one in our street had one. I'd only ever seen one on the conveyor belt of the Generation game after the cuddly toy. We didn't have fondue parties at the top of the Shankle, even on the 11th night. When Miss Kelly was clearly genuinely delighted with this present, Timothy grinned across the test tubes to me as if to confirm another victory. For a moment, I imagined Timothy being lowered into a bath of boiling acid, like in the Carry On Screaming movie, and your woman with the big eyelashes and the sexy voice saying, "Frying tonight." Then I remembered I was a blessed peacemaker. The joy of Christmas was temporarily suspended in Mr. Jackson's class when someone left a Christmas present on his desk, which turned out to be a pair of Izal medicated toilet rolls. "And what is the meaning of this?" roared Mr. Jackson. I assumed this was not a philosophical question. The sticky out veins at Mr. Jackson's temple began to throb dangerously. His face went redder than the time he caught Frankie Jones with a smutty picture of a page 3 girl underneath his probability revision notes. In the inevitable interrogation that followed, the guilty gift giver did not own up, and eventually Garvin Wilson pretended he had done it to save the whole class from a Christmas holiday of detention and extra homework. So I'll continue the story in a wee minute, but I'll just say hello to a few people. Where are we at now? Yes, hello to Evelyn and Nigel and Kenneth and Michael. Hello again, Norma Fleming. The lovely Leslie's here. Marty McCauley, greetings, Tony. Loved yesterday's reading. My wife Peggy orders tonics tea cakes on Amazon and has one with tea every evening. You see, they have to be delivered by special delivery no matter where you are in the world. Hi Jim Poole and hi Evelyn Brown and Jeremy and Ali Bennett. Back out watching around the fire pit with a scarf on tonight. I think you'll need that tonight. That's brilliant, Ali. Hope you enjoy this evening. And Neil and Andy McCauley and Ian Parsley. Hi Rachel and Morgan, who played my big brother at the 2018 performance of Paperboy the musical. Hello Angela and Keith. Lovely to have you as usual. Evening, Tony, says Neve. I agree with you about bringing in Christmas presents to the teachers. Yeah. Hi, Marlene Williamson. Hello, Orla. Hope you're all doing well there. All the O'Sullivans. Hi, Anne and Alan. And Aline says, I look forward to tonight's chapter. Nothing could beat chapter 13. Still laughing at that. I'm just trying to remember what was the, oh yeah. Chapter 13 was, yes, chapter 13 was teaching Sunday school. Yeah, that I can understand that. Hello, Glenn and Gillian and Lynn. Greetings, Tony, from Kenneth Glenville. Hi, Kenneth. Hi, Francis McGrath. The fondue set, there you go. Brings back memories, Neve. Hi, Orla and Oliver. So it's good to have you all with me. I'm going to continue the story of what happened next. During rehearsals for the Christmas Carol services, it became clear that the repertoire of the school choir at Belfast Royal Academy was much more sophisticated than that of the only youth club choir in the Upper Shankle. The school choir was so sophisticated that we sang Christmas carols no one had even heard of. Throughout December, we performed 4-part harmony beautifully in services of 9 lessons and carols in cold old churches where everyone wore fur coats and said all their ings. Our sopranos soared spectacularly in the descant over the last verse of Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Afterwards, there was tea and mince pies in the freezing church halls and not a tunnock's mallow in sight. The school choir also learned to sing Silent Night in German. And when we were invited to sing carols in a hut in front of the city hall, our music teacher got us special permission to go inside this historic building to chant our harmonies in German under the great big dome. It was enchanting standing under the city hall dome, listening to the echo of our voices. When I told my granny of my joy at the German vespers resounding around the marbled walls of the city hall, she was fuming because the Germans had dropped bombs on Belfast's most famous building during the war. "That's what that old brute Hitler would have wanted," she said. I wasn't so sure that singing Stille Nacht in Belfast City Hall had been a significant goal of the Nazi master plan. I was always shocked at how much my granny still hated the Germans, even though we had beaten them more than 30 years ago, and we still beat them regularly in the Eurovision Song Contest, It's a Knockout, and Miss World. Big Isabel hated Hitler more than she hated Gerry Adams. I wondered how long it would take for my generation to stop hating the IRA if we ever beat them too. Of course, there were more attractions in the school choir at BRA than the musical catalogue. Judy Carlton was a leading soprano like Olivia Newton-John in Grease. I had started out in the choir as a tenor along with Garvin Wilson, who was good at singing and Irish dancing, even though he was a Protestant with glasses. But as my voice just kept on getting lower, I end up as a small and insignificant bass among a group of tall sixth formers with acne. The basses stood at the back and the sopranos graced the front row of the choir, but from a distance I could still catch sight of the silky sheen of Judy Carlton's black hair on the back of her perfect head as we repeated dull Latin chants until they were in tune. Although I was bored by classical music, I pretended to appreciate every single semi-quaver because it made you sound clever. It was after one particularly draining rehearsal of Benjamin Britten that Joanne Galt stopped me as I was leaving the music room to ask me a very surprising question. "Are you going to enter Mr. BRA for the school's charity fair this year?" she inquired, almost as if I was not too physically repulsive to have a chance. "Me?" I asked. Garvin Wilson giggled, which was a cheek, given that he was ginger. "Yes," replied Joanne. "Sure, you're going to be lovely when you grow up and wise up a bit," she said. For a moment I was flattered, and I wondered if this was Joanne's way of telling me that she fancied me. Then I remembered that she only went out with boys who played in the glorious first 15 rugby team, and she had been working her way through the forwards this term. In spite of this disappointment, I took her evaluation of my looks seriously because I realised that if I was to be crowned Mr. BRA, this would make me irresistible to most girls, including Judy Carlton. I simply had to enter the competition. So with the forthcoming beauty and talent contests, on top of the imminent auditions for West Side Story, this December was turning out to be an exceptionally busy time for a working Breadboy. The auditions for the school play came first. I had always been frustrated that Miss Barron, our drama teacher, had failed to spot my acting talent and given me a starring role, the sort I deserved. In recent years, I had been overlooked for Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, and ended up with small parts as old men in The Crucible and Much Ado About Nothing. It was like auditioning to be James Bond and being given the part of the sidekick of the evil genius who had no lines and got eaten by sharks in the first 10 minutes. This year, I was determined to achieve a starring role. As luck would have it, there were no old men in West Side Story because it was all about young people in gangs stabbing each other, like on the Peace Line in West Belfast on a Saturday night. I was perfect for it. The other advantage I had this year was that West Side Story was a musical and I could sing. Providentially, the main character was called Tony. If justice was to be done, and I was cast as the leading man, then it would be easy for all my supporting actors to learn their lines. They called me Tony every day anyway, apart from Timothy Longsley, who called me Jippo. Another omen that I was meant to be Tony was that my discovery of an old 45 in my parents' record collection. As I was sorting out the groovy records from the square discs for our amusing new stereo in the sitting room, I stumbled upon a PJ Proby single of Maria from West Side Story. From the minute I discovered this treasure, I began singing along with PJ, and I'd been learning all the words and practicing the high notes and acting all the emotions for months. As I rehearsed the most beautiful sound I've ever heard, Maria, my mind wandered back to the disco at Chigwell, where I slow danced with my very own Italian Maria. This was yet another sign that I was meant to be the Tony who a beautiful Maria fell in love with. The plot of the musical also reminded me of my unrequited love for Sinead from the Lower Falls at Butlins in Mosney, because Tony and Maria were from two divided tribes too. In fact, West Side Story seemed to be based on my life, although there was no evidence of a normal mini shop in the script of the musical. Everything was falling into place perfectly until an unexpected problem developed. My voice kept getting lower and lower. For years, I had wanted puberty to get a move on, but now that I needed to be a tenor to play the part of Tony, I desired a temporary postponement. I could manage all the notes with PJ Proby at first, but as the weeks went by, the high notes became more and more of a strain. I was a good singer and I could reach a lot of high notes, but I was no BG. When Garvin Wilson, Ian Forrester, Thomas O'Hara and I arrived at the audition room, I was crestfallen when instead of being asked to perform my well-rehearsed rendition of Maria, Miss Barron asked us all to sing a C scale. I did my very best, but I realised that I was struggling with one or two of the higher notes. I was seething that Miss Barron gave me no opportunity to show that I could project the emotions of a Roger Moore while singing with the voice of a PJ Proby. The other auditionees struggled too, because Ian was even more of a bass than me, Thomas was still a soprano, and Garvin was ginger. Once the auditions were over, all we could do was wait. The cast would not be announced until the new year. It was as if Tom Baker, with the big long scarf, had decided to give up his sonic screwdriver and they were about to cast a new Doctor Who. For the whole of the Christmas holidays, I dreamed of being the star of West Side Story. But in the meantime, there was a talent contest and the heart of a certain girl to win. So let's say hello to a few more people before I keep going. Great facial expression, says Michael McKinley Sr. I call that the bakes of Belfast. And hello there, Sam Thompson and Grace Talitha. And Melanie, hello, hope you're doing well there. And Susan Wilgar, good evening. Hi, Sadie. And I'm glad you're enjoying it, Neve. And hi, Mike Moran, good to have you along again. So we'll continue the story. In anticipation of the charity talent contest, I asked my parents for early delivery of my Christmas present. This year I had requested a real electric guitar, like on Top of the Pops. I'd been going to guitar lessons round the corner with Mr. Rowing for years now, and I felt it was about time I graduated from my wee Spanish acoustic guitar with the crack up the middle of the wood to a proper grown-up rock instrument like Paul McCartney. However, I knew electric guitars were very expensive, even over 60 weeks from the Great Universal Club book, so I wasn't sure how my parents could ever afford to buy me one. But overhearing my parents whispering one night in the kitchen, I realised this dream might come true. Sure, he's an awful good wee lad with his homework and all. Aye, but his head's in the clouds, Betty, love. Och, Eric, sure he works hard in that old bread van, so he does. Aye, for buttons. Sure, it's his wee interest for him. It'll keep him off the streets. Well, there's going to be no more overtime in the foundry after Christmas. I could tell by my father's tone of voice that he was relenting. And once it was eventually revealed that I was getting an electric guitar for Christmas, it didn't take much further persuasion to ensure the instrument would be in my possession a few days before the talent contest. Until then, I would have to practice my chosen song on my Rolf Harris stylophone. Choosing the right song was always important in a talent competition. Both Lena Zavaroni and Bernie Flint had been brilliant at this on Opportunity Knocks, so I decided to involve a few trusted friends in the process of song selection. I lured Titch McCracken and Philip Ferris round to our house one Saturday afternoon with the promise of a box of out-of-date gravy rings. Philip was wearing full punk regalia, but he was still in bad form because his father had dropped him from the boys' brigade football team for refusing to remove his safety pins during the match. Titch was in a very good mood because he was wearing a brand new pair of Guddies, which he had shoplifted from the Barden Bucket outside McMurray's in North Street, while he had been waiting for a black taxi. Titch was good at choosing what was going to be a hit in the charts, while Philip brought serious musical credibility. Of course, I had some ideas of my own as well. I considered whether the charity talent contest might be a good opportunity to share the gospel with the whole school and even get a small proportion of them saved. I could do a punk version of What a Friend We Have in Jesus and subvert the art form for Jesus the same way Cliff Richard did with rock and roll. Larry Norman with the long hair from America sang Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music? So I could sing Why Should Punk Be All Spitting and Fighting? Why's a bop, wee lad? Was Philip's response to these sacred suggestions. What about doing a blondie? Asked Titch, clearly too blinded by his lust for Debbie Harry to realise that I was not a female lead vocalist. This fact also ruled out any Bee Gees song. The chosen number would have to be easy enough for me to both sing and play on the electric guitar at the same time, and this certainly reduced the options. Both Bohemian Rhapsody and Rat Trap were beyond my emerging abilities. Stairway to Heaven was also out of the question because, according to Titch's cousin from Ballymoney, if you played it backwards, it contained hidden messages in praise of Satan. I couldn't manage to play Stairway to Heaven forwards, so there was no danger of any devil worship at the BRA talent contest this year. I knew I could attempt a decent rock version of Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley, and perhaps one or two status quo songs, because this required knowledge of only 3 chords. But I wanted to perform something more edgy and up to date. What about Anarchy in the UK? Suggested Philip predictably. Stop ye talking like a clampet, said Titch. A fight ensued in which Philip's safety pin nose scab started to bleed all over Titch's brand new Guddies. It seemed both were being punished for their sins, and when I urged them to join me in the way of non-violence, they told me to wise up. Once they had inflicted sufficient damage on one another, they calmed down, and a more sensible conversation began. What about the undertones, because they're the only ones that sing in our accent, suggested Philip. But they're a band and it's only me in the contest, I said. I know, said Titch. What about Jilted John? This was a funny punk song about Jilted John, who was going out with a girl called Julie, who chucks him to go out with a love rival called Gordon. That's not serious punk, said Philip. That's taking the Ballyks out of Anarchy. Philip was getting very angry again. He was starting to sound very political, although not at all like the Alliance Party. But it's funny, Philip. It's good crack, so it is. Are punks not allowed to laugh? I asked. Sellouts, said Philip with a sneer and a spit, and he walked out. He had a face on him like a Lurgan spade ever since he went punk, commented Titch. Well, I don't care what he says, I announced. I'm going to do Jilted John at the talent contest. But can you play it? Asked Titch. Wee buns, I replied with pretend confidence. That night, I recorded Jilted John off Radio Luxembourg, and for the next few weeks, I practiced it every day. Even though the song had not been written for the Rolf Harris stylophone, I managed to grasp the tune and learn the lyrics, and I practiced singing in an English accent. Philip would have been proud of me. When my electric guitar finally arrived from the club book, it was just a matter of restringing it upside down to make it a left-handed guitar, and then transposing my performance to the new instrument. Next, I had to practice standing up and playing at the same time, which wasn't as easy as your man with the curly hair and Queen made it look on Top of the Pops. By the time the day of the talent contest arrived, I was certain my recital of Jilted John was very good. I performed the song to the whole family in a final dress rehearsal. I dressed up for the occasion in my oldest jeans, my plastic leather jacket, and an old t-shirt with a rip covered in safety pins generously donated from the huge sewing kit inside Auntie Mabel's pouffe. With Granny visiting, my family formed a very imposing judging panel. I forgot some of the lyrics in the dress rehearsal, but I covered it up with a few na-na-na-na-nas, which was completely acceptable in the punk genre, and no one seemed to notice. "Oh, God love him, that was lovely, son," said my mother. "Aye, dead on," was my father's muted critique before returning to his homemade brewery kit in the garage. "Class!" exclaimed my wee brother, clapping his hands excitedly. Granny was uncharacteristically quiet for a moment. Her mouth was hanging open, as if she hadn't put her teeth in, and that day she looked particularly shocked. "For the love and honour of pig's gravy," said Big Isabel, "what in the name of blazes was that? I thought you were going to do one of your wee good living songs like that lovely wee Cliff Richards fella." "Load of shite," said my big brother. I accepted that the controversial nature of the punk movement would inevitably provoke a mixed response, and so I proceeded to school for the charity talent contest undeterred. Daddy lent me the amplifiers and speakers from the Westie Disco, and Mommy gave me a lift to my first punk gig in the Ford Escort respray. In spite of her artistic reservations, Granny gave me 50p for the charity to help the wee orphans. The atmosphere was electric in the assembly hall that night. It may have been dark and windy outside, and there may have been shooting in the distance, but inside the hall, it was like the night of the Oscars in America, when rich film stars got prizes for good acting. My mother regularly showed her appreciation of my own acting talents every time I was feeling too sick to go to school on the day of a maths test. She told me I could win an Oscar. In the midst of the feverish last-minute preparations backstage, it became clear I had limited competition. Garvin Wilson was going to do some Irish dancing in a kilt like a girl. This was challenging too many gender and cultural norms to achieve mass popularity. I was sure his wee jig would earn some laughs, but not many decibels on the clapometer. "Are you nervous about your performance?" I asked Garvin. Before Garvin could respond, Frankie Jones laughed the filthiest of laughs. 4 of the spottiest school choir boys were going to be a barber shop quartet and sing about the Swanee River in straw hats and waistcoats. None of these boys had ever been anywhere near the barber shop I went to in Castle Street. Admittedly, their harmony sounded perfect during their backstage rehearsals, but I doubted if the school would clap much for these 4 guys because they were swats who won prizes for additional maths. Meanwhile, the girls' gymnastics club was going to do a dance in leotards with ribbons to the music of Seasons in the Sun. I realised that the leotards would attract a certain amount of appreciation because Frankie Jones was already backstage promising every dancer his full support, and I knew for certain that my big brother would give the gymnastic girls the biggest clap. The only other competitors of note were a tiny Form 1 girl who did a squeaky Frank Spencer impersonation, a cross-eyed Form 2 boy who did a brilliant walk the dog with his yo-yo, and a Form 3 magician who knew which card you'd pick and made his balls disappear under 3 beakers from the dinner hall. I was going to be the most contemporary contestant by far. When the running order was revealed, I discovered I was to be the final contestant. Of course, this could work in my favour if the other acts were weak, but it gave me too much time to get nervous. I sat in the wings, peeking out through the blue velvet curtains to assess the level of applause for every act. Garvin's performance was by all accounts flawless, but sadly misunderstood, and the Form 1 impersonator forgot her lines and ran off the stage crying for her mammy. The barbershop quartet was perfect, but nobody cheered, and the magician lost all credibility when a jack of diamonds fell out of the sleeve of his blazer. The yo-yo boy was truly talented, but had too few tricks to entertain an audience of 200 teenagers for more than 1 minute. Only the gymnastics club appeared to receive anything close to a tumultuous reception, in spite of the fact that 2 of the less experienced gymnasts got their ribbons badly entwined. Finally, it was my turn. I checked that my strings were in tune and that my flies were done, and I walked onto the stage. I could feel my heart thumping as much with excitement as with fear. The first person I recognised in the sea of faces before me was Judy Carlton herself. She was sitting in the front row between Joanne Galt and Thomas O'Hara. I noticed with great delight that this trio applauded me as soon as I walked onto the stage. It was only when I heard the word "Jippo" being cast in my reaction that I noticed Timothy Longsley was also sitting in the front row. "I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie." I glanced towards Judy, hoping she would notice the uncanny similarity of her name with the object of my punk rock affections. She was smiling and clapping along to the drum beat on the cassette tape I was singing and playing over. This boosted my confidence, and I attempted to pogo and sing and play my guitar all at the same time, with no mistakes whatsoever in the whole of the first verse. However, my enthusiasm got the better of me in the second verse, and I dropped my plectrum. Quickly bending down to pick up the plectrum, I knocked the amp plug out of the guitar, and for a few moments I became acoustic. Although I recovered remarkably quick, this had been just the sort of mistake Timothy Longsley had been hoping for, and he began to boo. All his rugger mates joined in because they copied everything Timothy did without question. I was raging. It was all unfolding right in front of me. Judy and Joanne and Thomas were still cheering, while only a few seats away, Timothy and assorted rugby-playing Klingons were booing. I had just reached the verse of Jilted John where the lyrics about his love rival went, "But I know he's a moron, Gordon is a moron." I sang the official lyrics one time, but the second time, my emotions took over, and I sang, "Timothy's a moron, Timothy's a moron." I lost track of the song and stared down at a shocked-looking Timothy Longsley in the front row while repeating, "Timothy's a moron, Timothy's a moron." At first, the audience loved this improvisation and cheered, while Timothy and the Klingons stood up and booed even louder. But I could not stop repeating the lyric. When I eventually ended my hate-filled mantra, I noticed it had gone very quiet in the assembly hall. The cheering and applause had ceased, and everyone, including Judy, was looking straight at me with a puzzled and slightly concerned look on their faces. Thomas had hit a reddener and had put his head in his hands. Suddenly, Timothy leapt up on the stage and jumped on top of me. Several Klingons followed, and soon 4 rugger boys were beating me up on stage in front of the whole school. The audience began cheering again. They completely misunderstood. They thought this was all part of a punk performance, and they joined in the applause with gladness. The teachers also assumed this was a pre-planned performance and did not intervene. I clung onto my precious new guitar to ensure it would sustain no damage, and I managed to knee one of the Klingons in the ghoulies. But it was a losing battle. At last, several sixth formers emerged from backstage to remove my attackers, and this act got even more applause because everyone thought it was all supposed to be part of my wonderful representation of the culture of violence associated with a punk rock concert. The only teenage pacifist in West Belfast was providing the whole school with an orgy of violence. By the time the attack was over and the bullies were being scolded backstage by the other performers, I had a bloody nose and a split lip, but I was determined to finish the last few lines of Jilted John. I couldn't look in Judy's direction because I was so ashamed. I collected myself and restored my dignity and sang the last words of the song, which now took on a tragic new poignancy. Yeah, yeah, it's not fair. I'm so upset. I'm so upset. Yeah, yeah, I ought to smash his face in. Yeah, but he's bigger than me. I departed the stage to thunderous applause. Feel wick, wee lad, I thought. Thomas ran up to congratulate me, but I wasn't hanging around. Within seconds, I was locked in the teacher's toilet behind the stage, mopping up tears and blood. I missed the announcement of the winning act, but I knew it wasn't me when I heard the distant sound of Frankie Jones crying, "Go on, you girls, yees," followed by a refrain of Seasons in the Sun. It wasn't fair. As I sat in the toilet gathering myself, I imagined what would happen if I left an anonymous note with Big Duff's bread delivery saying that Timothy Longsley was a secret IRA spy in the BRA rugby team. Not a single "thou shalt not" in the whole Bible could keep me from hating Timothy. But before I could develop the murder plot any further, there was a quiet knock on the toilet door. "Go away," I shouted. "It's me, Tony," said a kindly female voice. "Who's me?" I answered roughly. "It's Joanne," she said. "What?" I asked. "We saw that, Tony." "So what, wee girl?" "We knew that wasn't acting," said Joanne. "Aye, but he'll get away with it, won't he?" I replied. "Don't worry about him, Tony. Sure, you're going to be Mr. BRA, aren't you? You were picked." "Suppose," I said. Joanne was correct. Out of the 3 entries, I had won Mr. BRA. The other 2 boys who entered the beauty contest were second formers with buck teeth. "Judy Carton says you're the nicest boy in the school anyway." "What?" I stepped back in surprise, knocking over the teacher's toilet brush and a pile of Izal medicated toilet rolls. Perhaps my ill-fated punk performance had been worth it, after all. Was it really possible that a girl like Judy would prefer a boy like me to a rugger-playing hero like Timothy Longsley? I was shocked, so I was. So there you are, that's chapter 16 of Breadboy. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for joining me this evening. Thanks for joining me, Julie McCulloch, who I'm sure some good memories of the Westie Disco, Julie. And hi, good evening, Anne Kirk and Laura Coulter. Hope you're all doing well there, Laura. And Fiona Hawkins, who may even remember that very charity contest in the Assembly Hall of Belfast Royal Academy around 1979. And great as usual. Thanks, says Evelyn. Thank you, says Susan. Lovely, fantastic. Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it, Kenneth, as well. Okay, well, I'll be back same time tomorrow night with the next chapter. In the meantime, stay home, stay well, and stay positive.